Hello and go after. Welcome to Sportsball Razzifarai, a show that provides answers to viewer-supplied questions from a modern-day Celtic Norse shaman here in South Central Alaska. Be sure to tune in each Wednesday night when the shaman answers questions from viewers like you. Come on, let's hear what the shaman is answering this week. Day, someone's little girl, daughter, sister, girlfriend, fiance, wife, cousin, mother, auntie, grandmother, great-grandmother, elder, disappears, shattering, a family, a community, the world. There is something we can all do. Remember them. Look at that.
Hello, go after my friends, and welcome to Sportsmar, or Questions Answered. Today, Robin asks the question about feelings. Why are feelings so important? Why are the emotional states that we incur throughout our day, throughout every day, why are they so important, and how do they play into our intellect and our spiritual journey? How does it all work? Before we get started today, I want to say firstly and foremost, as I always do, talk for all of you. Thank you for joining, follow, subscribing, all the super secret handshakes. If you haven't done so yet, please consider follow, or subscribe. Whether you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, or my absolute favorite, New Reality TV. newrealitytv.com is a streaming channel dedicated to hundreds of shows that show us a different perspective, give us a piece of intellect that we may not have had before. So it allows us to grow in our spiritual journey along our path. So I hope that you will check them out. As always, newrealitytv.com. A wonderful opportunity. Now, for those of you who haven't had questions answered, it's probably because you haven't asked. Well, now's your chance. NorseWhispers.com. You can go there. You can scroll all the way to the bottom. Look to the left. You'll see a big orange button that says Ask Me a Question. If I make a show about your question and answer it there, I will give you a free shirt, just like this guy here has. He loves it. He loves it. And it's free of charge. There's no shipping, there's no handling, there's no special hidden fees, no subscriptions, nothing required. All you have to do is get an answer to your question online, and you get a shirt in the mail for you to keep. So, win-win. You get an answer, you get a shirt. Win-win. Today, I want to talk about the emotional processing, right? Why is it so doggone important? What does it do? Well, many of us only know the extremes. We know that when we're super angry, or we're super sad, or we're super loving, we're super excited, we're super happy, we only know the extremes. And many times, everything else kind of falls in the middle. But do not fool yourself for a minute in thinking that nothing's happening. There's no emotional thing going on, because there is. It's all in the background. So, to start this conversation, let's start talking about how emotions are created. Well, that's a very exciting topic, because emotions are created when our physical sensory input brings in energy into the system. We'll call it the system, the neural system. It kind of floats all around the body, and it passes nerve energies using bioelectricity, and it kind of passes things around. So your vision that you have is converted by your eye into the optic nerve, where it's passed as energy. It's just little signatures of a bioelectricity that's then transported back into your mind. Now, physiology aside, my grandfathers have given me a wonderful visualization of this that I'd like to share, if I may. When we process these images into our eyes, behind our eyes sits at what they call the emotional filter. And essentially it's just a filter that we're going to set with another piece of our brain. We'll talk about that in a minute. And we're going to set that. And as this energy, right, so here's the filter, and the energy comes in from the eyeball, we're going to say vision. It's going to come into this filter, and this filter is going to change it just a little bit based on our emotional filter. Now, you and I, may refer to this emotional filter as our overall mood, how we're feeling, grumpy, happy, normal, whatever, right? So that's going to alter this signaling. Now, this same filter is also what kind of divides what we see in an image. So if we take a picture, you're looking at me now. Many of you say, I see his big white beard. Okay, that's a good observation. Maybe others of you see ponytail hanging down. Maybe some of you see the necklace. It's where the eye is drawn based on what your mood is. Now, I'm a very simplistic picture here, but say you're looking at a picture of nature. If you had more of a negative outlook, you'd probably see the dirt and the grime and the dirt, maybe the trash laying on the ground. Your eye would be drawn to those things. Whereas if you were in a happy mood, things had gone your way that day, and woohoo, you're excited about life, you may see flower buds, you may see the brand new budlings on the trees, you may see life and nature and the beauty therein. It all depends on your mood, how you see the world. Now, as this data is then contorted, right, it's twisted just a little bit to match the mood, then it's going to drop out the bottoms, like a trap door at the bottom of the filter. Down we go into this thing called the well of the self. Now, the well of the self is a well, and it kind of speaks to the depth of who we are, which is why I love the visualization. So, down the well, at the bottom, is a beautiful mosaic of rocks, just covering the bottom of the well. It's a beautiful mosaic. They're beautiful rocks, and they're arranged in such a beautiful way, a very unique way of who you are, of what values you have intrinsically. Your honor and your truthfulness, your courage, all of these things are defined by these rocks at the bottom of this well. Now, above the rocks is a half-filled well of water. Now, when things are really confusing and we may be having some emotional struggles going on, the water becomes very turbulent. And when it becomes turbulent, it's going to draw up the silt, and it becomes hard to see through, right? So the energy that's dropping down now out of this emotional filter down through this well, going to go all the way through the water to the rocks, right? Where it's going to pick up our values. We're going to make a decision based on those values. Well, if the water gets really, really murky, as an example, we may say, instead of going all the way there, we'll just take a shortcut here. And we're going to kind of jump out the side of the well instead of waiting to go all the way to the bottom. Now, if we go all the way to the bottom, there's a receptacle there that picks up the energy, and then it releases this other technology called biochemistry. Now, this biochemistry is created by little valves around your heart. It's a natural body function. This is what creates our recognition. Hold on, our recognition of emotion. Now we're going to take that to a little bit more here in just a minute. So out comes this biochemistry, a certain measure of it, right? So it's we'll say, just for simplicity's sake, we'll say it's a Mountain Dew bottle of biochemistry that's now been released into the system, and it's on its way to your brain. Now, in the meantime, had we taken the shortcut out, instead of getting the whole Mountain Dew bottle, now we get one of those little inky dinky cans, like you get little apple juices, right? Little bitty can. We don't get as much biochemistry. Now, there's a good thing, bad thing about that. Because as this biochemistry comes up towards the heart, it's going to go through what my ancestors refer to as the sheath of truth. I don't know where they get this, but the sheath of truth is another wonderful visualization that kind of explains our bandwidth and what we can handle. Now remember, we have biochemistry that's flowing up to the brain. We have energy that we've already created in this bioelectricity, and all of this has to go through this sheath of truth. Okay? Now, had we come out the side and we only have our little apple juice of biochemistry, this adds to what we call the silt on the bottom of this sheath. So the sheath is like a tube, and along the bottom we'll get silt. And that silt kind of prevents emotional energy from passing through the sheath. So it's going to kind of limit how much we can process. Now at the top, we also reserve another little space, and this is our cognitive space, our ability to think while we're processing this energy. Right? So think of the tube. We got the little bottom here that's got a little silt in it, a little dirt along the bottom. And then up the top, we got a little bit of head space, right? We got a little bit of air space. And then the rest of the tube is now filled with this biochemistry plus the bioelectricity. So we're processing the emotional state of energy passing through the sheath. Now, obviously, if all of this biochemistry and this bioelectricity all can't fit in the tube, it's going to overrun the tube. It's going to overfill. And when it does that, it kind of rolls around to the rest of the brain, of which the rest of the brain has no idea what to do with this. So it simply responds with physiological symptoms. You may see sweaty palms, you may sweat, you may rapid heart rate, panic attack, anxiety attacks. All of these things are symptoms of our sheath of truth overrunning. We just had too much bandwidth going through that tube, right? So very detrimental and problematic, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. Now, when we have our little apple juice thing of biochemistry, we're minimizing the amount that we're putting through the sheath of truth. We're not putting the whole enchilada that we got when we seriously thought about it and seriously felt about it. We're just passing this apple can, little bitty thing. And so there's not as much biochemistry and bioelectricity to kind of fill the bandwidth. So it's easier to process. Good thing, bad thing. We'll talk about that in a minute. Once we come out of this sheath of truth, we have this processed energy. And now we've converted our biochemistry back to bioelectricity. Now, we're going to do that. The brain, a little visualization that my grandfather gave me is when the processor right outside the sheath of truth, when it receives the bioelectricity, or the biochemistry, when it receives the biochemistry, it's going to kind of look at how it's structured, how it's formed, what's in it. It's going to say, okay. And then it's got a recipe book back inside your brain. It's got a little recipe book that you've built through experiences throughout your lifetime. You know what things look like, you know what things feel like, right? To a degree, and we'll talk about that. But it's going to look at this recipe card, and the recipe card is going to say, hey, I feel this way, whatever this is. I feel happy, right? Oh, I'm happy. So it assigns that energy now to this packet, right? For lack of a better word. This little bundle of energy now is going to get assigned this value of whatever we just read on a recipe card. From there, we're going to go to what I call the me gate. Me is in M-E, me gate. Which your gate is your gate, but you'll call it your me gate. That makes sense. Anyway, the me gate is where we get to decide. Ultimately, we have a decision as to whether we're going to accept what is passed to us from this sheath of truth, or we can say, no, I don't want to believe that. I don't want to feel that. I don't want to understand that. Much the same way as maybe we're in a deep state of depression, someone brings something that's kind of joyful to us, and we may cast it aside. We may deny it because we're really into this depression, right? And so we may deny that other energy for the sake of being in this state. Conversely, if we're happy and we're just elated, everything's going our way, it's a super exciting day, and somebody brings some doldrum news, some really bummer, right? We have a tendency to deny it. Okay, that's great, go away, right? We don't want that. We're having fun, we're enjoying the moment, we're having, we have this positive energy. Same thing applies, right? So we've had this bolt of negative energy come through, and we're denying it. And that's how we do this, and that's what it looks like in real life. Now, we talk about how do we recognize emotion? How do we learn emotion? Well, there's a bunch of different ways. It's actually a bunch of different parts to it. The first and most powerful way is you're going to get examples as you're a child, right? So we all experience something, maybe traumatic, and your brain is going to gauge our response to this event based on what the people around us do. So if mom cries, we cry, right? Dad cries, we cry, all right? We're adopting their values. So we're putting their rock in our well, okay? And so we'll go through our lives, particularly throughout probably almost to the 30s in our lifetime. And this is for men. Women are a little earlier. They're going to kind of top out, if you will. They may top out in the mid to early 20s. So men are 30s, upper 20s, where they're going to top out. And that is very stereotypical. That's kind of a shot in the dark, right? There are some people who do it much quicker, and some people who take much longer. So it all depends on a multitude of factors in our environment. But what you're going to see is individuals whom can control that response because they have managed what's in their well. They know what their values are. They know what's important to them, and that's what they're going to stick to. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Now, those can be changed. Obviously, we grow. We may have certain attitudes, and then we find we get into a relationship with our significant other, and all of a sudden, whole new value set, right? And then the first baby is born. Whole new value set, right? So there will be events in our lives that will change those values as we grow. There's nothing carved in stone. Nobody says, hey, you have to have this rock. You have to have that rock. Now, don't get me wrong. There will be people in our lives who will attempt to do that. This is called influential energy. And influential energy is just as dangerous as, say, our sensory input. So it processes in the brain no different than sensory input or imagination. All of them process kind of the same way. And they may draw emotion based on what's going on. We hear that influence trying to change our mind, trying to change who we are. And we may be compliant, We may agree, hey, that's pretty cool. Okay, I can do that. We may be resistant, or we may be absolutely retaliatory, right? So no, right? You're wrong, da 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 da, right? So those are the kind of the spectrum, if you will, of our responses to influential energies. Now, influential energies are all around us all the time. They're other people in other vehicles. There are other people around us. They're on the airways. They're even this broadcast right now has some level of influential energy. What you decide to do with this influential energy, whereas I may be a little different than some of the influential energies that you're going to interpret, some of them want you to change. They're forcing you to change. They demand that you change. Pound on the desk. They want you to change. They want your vote. They want you to purchase something. Those would be influential energies. I, on the other hand, am offering you information that you can do with it what you see fit. You're the one that gets to make the decision, not me. I'm not telling you you have to be this way or you have to be that way, because no one is identical. Everyone's well, everyone's mosaic at the bottom of that well is absolutely 100% different. Hands down, right? Even twins. Now, my twin sons are now 30, and they're very different people. Why? Because they have different values in their well, right? So, for those of you out there who are twins, you know that while your brother is, or sister, is amazing, they're different. They're different people. They have different ideas, they have different values, they have different thoughts, they have different thought processes. So they're very different people. Hence, they have different values at the bottom of this well. So, everyone is very unique. Now, this recipe card that we were talking about, this recipe card, as I mentioned, is made up over a series of your lifetime. Now, many of you say, oh, my teenager, what a crazy ride that is, right? How many have teenagers? I have 2 in the house. And you say, well, how are you feeling? How do you feel about that? Well, I don't know. And you start thinking, well, are they just trying to fluff me off or what? No, they're not. They really don't know. Why? Because their card's not written yet. They're still writing their card. They're still figuring out what goes on the card based on what the chemical compositions are that they're receiving, right? So they may be having all kinds of influential energies that's just turning this biochemistry and the energy received into this whirlwind of what the heck. Quite honestly, they're just trying to make sense of that composition before they can actually write something in their recipe book, right? So that's really where teenagers are. Now, some of us, myself included, there are details that will change throughout your life. Remember, as you're growing, as you're getting older, you're manipulating your DNA. You're manipulating the cellular construction of your body. Granted, it is microscopic. You couldn't pick it up on a scope if you could make one, right? It's so minor. But there are changes nonetheless, and that change means that when I drop this energy into the well, and then I create this biochemistry out of the heart, right, with these hormones, the structures that are creating that biochemistry are now different. They're different by just a little bit, right? And when they're different by just a little bit, that creates a different composition to the biochemistry released. When the biochemistry is now interpreted by the brain, again, we're looking at composition, and it's close to what we remember to being happy, but it's a little different. Well, why don't we just be mostly happy, right? And that's a lot of what we experience throughout our lives as our experiences and our memories alter our DNA and then alter this emotional path to everything that we process. Now, for those of you who think that I'm not emotional, I don't do that, I never, horse manure. And you're only fooling yourself, because no one else who knows. Every experience we have from the time that we begin to construct our cellular constructions, I mean, we're talking way before you were born, 9 months maybe, before you were born, as your cells begin to split and manipulate and they are being modified, they are being changed. When your mom and dad decide to get together and do the things in the bedroom that you're not going to go in and see, they are taking a snapshot of their DNA at that moment to bind together. And then once this is bound together, once the biological process happens, then this collection begins to manipulate itself, and it will repeat until our biological processes no longer work. So we're going to keep changing. And that's the idea of growth. That's the idea of growing older. That's how this all works. Now, your emotions are a critical piece to what you learn, because the way you feel is what you see. So if you feel rotten, what you see out your eyes, or what you interpret you saw, is more discouraging, right? If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Well, if you're happy and you know it, don't only worry about your hands. Know that you've set your emotional filters to now interpret anything you receive in a joyous way, right? So it's going to have joyful energy with it. That's the idea of these filters. Now, what these filters are kind of a crossbreed for those of you who may have some anthropological history lessons going on. You may remember we started our lives as humans as searching for prey versus getting searched for by predators. So our eyes, or more importantly our senses, were attuned to picking things out of a scene. So if we looked at a row of bushes and we saw a predator in there, we knew, hey, see ya, hasta la vista, right? Versus if we saw prey, it was like, all right, dinner time, right? In much the same way, our eyes, or our sensory input, does the same thing for good, or what we perceive as good, versus what we perceive as not so good. Our eyes and our sensory input in general is altered, and alters now what we see, what our brain then interprets from the experiences that we have. So this is why it is so important, our emotional state, which is set by the me gate. Once we decide to let anything through the me gate, the last thing is to now set these emotional filters, set our aura, set the water in the well, and move on to the next experience. They're all very critical steps. The key to remember here is your emotional state is what lets you interpret the world the way you want, not the way you're being forced to. All right? So that's why it's so critical to understand our emotional state and its value to our everyday. I hope I've answered your question, Robin. I look forward. Your shirt is already in the mail. We got that out early this afternoon once we decided on a question to make a show about, and got that on its way. So you should be receiving that in about just a couple of days, I think, is what the post office told me. So on its way to you. Do know, for those of you who are ready, want to ask a question, you can always hit us up by hitting us up on the Facebook chat, by hitting us up on the live chat in that other place, TikTok. And then, as always, you can always visit our website to support the channel and support me and the mission by visiting akoutlaw.live. And so just take this link and go all the way here where it says Our Friends. Just change that, or take the .com and change that to .live instead. So then you're on your way. So you can always check us out there too, as well as support the show with your generous donations. So we're always looking, and we're always hoping. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I hope I've answered the question. And for those of you who are still got that question driving you, come visit the site. Ask. Let's get dialogue. Let's talk. Let's see if we can't get you an answer. All right? All right, my friends. Love and light. Enjoy the rest of your Wootens Day, or All Things Day, and enjoy your evening. And remember that we will be back at you bright and early tomorrow morning for another edition of Belly Sneak, where we'll talk about the, let's see, what is tomorrow? Oh, yes, the strength of Thor. Yeah, my favorite, one of my favorite gods. So, see you there. All right? Love and light, my friends.